During World War II, the German war machine produced some of the most ambitious and intimidating military hardware ever conceived. Among these giants was the Karl-Gerät, a series of self-propelled siege mortars so enormous they seemed to defy logic. Designed for a single, brutal purpose, to smash the world's strongest fortifications, these behemoths were a marvel of engineering, a logistical nightmare, and a weapon whose fearsome potential was often undermined by its own complexity. The story of the Karl-Gerät begins in March 1936. With the formidable French Maginot Line dominating military strategy, the German arms manufacturer Rheinmetall proposed a super-heavy howitzer capable of reducing its concrete and steel bunkers to rubble. The initial concept involved a weapon that would be transported in several pieces and assembled on site. However, recognizing that this lengthy setup time would make it vulnerable, the design was changed in January 1937 to that of a self-propelled weapon. Extensive trials were conducted in 1938 and 1939 to solve the immense challenges of moving such a vehicle, using tank prototypes and scale models to study the extreme ground pressure. Firing trials in June 1939 proved the concept viable. The weapon gained its famous nickname from the direct involvement of General Karl Becker of the artillery, who championed its development. In total, 7 of these monstrous mortars were built. A 7th vehicle was built for research and testing and remained unnamed. The 6 production units were delivered between November 1940 and August 1941. Seeking to improve the weapon's performance, Germany later developed a longer-range 54-centimeter barrel, though only 3 were ever completed and fitted to the existing chassis. The Karl-Gerät was a true giant. The 124-ton vehicle was powered by a Daimler-Benz 12-cylinder engine that gave it a top speed of only 10 kilometers per hour. This engine was primarily used for final positioning and aiming, as the weapon's traverse was limited to just 4 degrees to each side. Moving the mortar was a monumental undertaking. For long distances, the Karl-Gerät was disassembled into 7 loads. The main chassis was hung between 2 massive arms on a specialized 5-axle Schnabel railway car. For road travel, it was loaded onto a 6-axle Kuhlemeyer Straßenroller lowboy trailer. The entire process required a special 35-ton mobile crane. Deploying the weapon for firing was just as complex. The firing position had to be meticulously prepared in advance, the ground leveled, and any soft spots filled in. To fire, the vehicle's suspension was raised, lowering the chassis to the ground to help absorb the colossal recoil. Reloading was a slow process, as the massive shell could only be loaded when the barrel was at 0 elevation, meaning the mortar had to be re-aimed after every single shot. To feed the beast, 2 or 3 dedicated munitions schlepper, modified Panzer IV tank chassis with a crane, were assigned to each mortar to carry the enormous shells. The Karl-Gerät's operational history was marked by brief moments of action interspersed with long periods of inactivity, often plagued by technical issues and shifting strategic plans. Debut on the Eastern Front, 1941. The mortars first saw combat during Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. Heavy Artillery Battalion 833 was formed with 4 Karl-Gerät. 1 battery was sent to support the attack on the Brest-Litovsk fortress, while the other was assigned to Army Group South near Lviv. The debut was underwhelming. The Lviv battery quickly became non-operational due to technical deficiencies. The battery at Brest fired 31 rounds but suffered from assembly problems and issues with its electrical firing mechanism. Shortly after, the battalion was withdrawn and reformed with conventional artillery. The Siege of Sevastopol, 1942. The weapon's most significant action came during the Siege of Sevastopol. 3 Karl-Gerät, including Thor and Odin, were deployed to crack the heavily defended port city. They fired dozens of concrete-piercing shells at the formidable Maxim Gorky Coastal Defense Battery. While the shells failed to penetrate the battery's 305mm armored turrets, they did manage to jam one and caused significant damage to the supporting concrete structures and a nearby command post. The Leningrad Letdown, 1942 to 1943. Later in 1942, a battery was sent to Army Group North for the planned offensive against Leningrad, Operation George. However, a Soviet preemptive attack canceled the German offensive, and the mortars never fired a shot. They were held in reserve for subsequent planned attacks, such as Operation Feuerzauber, Fire Magic, but these were also canceled following the disaster at Stalingrad. The mortars were finally recalled in December 1942, having spent months at the front without participating in combat. After another planned deployment in 1943 fell through, the Karl-Gerät were placed under a special care. The Karl-Gerät was an astounding feat of engineering, representing the apex of siege artillery design. However, it was also a prime example of a weapon whose immense power was crippled by its own complexity. Its slow speed, nightmarish logistics, and mechanical unreliability made it an impractical tool in the fast-paced warfare of the Eastern Front. Ultimately, the Karl-Gerät remains a fascinating but flawed superweapon, a powerful symbol of Germany's ambition to solve military problems with sheer technological might.